Every now and then I like to set myself a challenge. Today's challenge was to create a portrait of Michael Jackson, a very iconic and recognisable face, in 10 minutes. So let's see where this takes us. I start out by using a very chunky black Posca marker pen. That's acrylic ink in a marker pen form. So really nice for working with. The nib of the pen is a very broad nib, so it allows you to do very expressive things using either the flat side of the blade or to get a much thinner line you can turn it to a different angle. You can see here I'm creating the eyebrows and other sort of the main features of the face. I'm outlining and focusing on the dominant shapes and angles as I see them of the portrait based on the original portrait. They're all very important relative to each other. So you can see, for example, the two eyebrows have to be right relative to one another for it to be a recognisable likeness. The hair is a wonderful excuse to scribble, obviously, and you can see those wonderfully expressive marks that the Posca pen creates when you use it when you angle it in different directions. And then I'm using the very tip of the very corner of one side of the nib just to mark out the corners of the nose or the mouth, the nostrils, just to guide myself and before I'm overly committing to marking with really strong lines, I'm just sort of marking those out as I go. You can see the timer slowly going down in the left corner. The whole time I'm sort of aware that the time is ticking, but equally relaxed into the portrait by this point. So I'm really focusing on what I interpret as the strongest lines of that portrait. You can see those wonderful zigzag lines and how the pen changes direction and changes thickness. Now I'm going over to a palette knife and acrylic paints, and immediately you can see how well those show up on that background. I should say that I'm working on red cartridge paper, and therefore the less paint I have on the palette knife, the more the grain of the paper is going to show up. Where I'm flattening the blade right against the surface of the paper, you get a real sense of the grain of the paper. I'm just beginning to introduce hints of brighter colours into the mix. But basically at this stage I'm focusing on the lightest areas, the contours, if you like, of the portrait, of the original photograph, and translating those into light areas on the portrait in front of me in the painting. You can see I'm using the palette knife at different angles, so you've got an asymmetric blade shape with different lengths of side to it, depending on which way you hold it. So you've got lots of different options for creating expressive marks. And I'm placing the paint and moving it, placing, moving it, placing, moving it, sometimes smudging it with my fingers as well to soften it, or just to move it around. There's a lot of things you can do with a palette knife that you really can't do with a brush, or would be very, very different. I can't remember what I saw out of the window at this point, but can't have been that important. Anyway, so now I'm going onto a brush, and that may have been what I was looking for, I can't remember. Anyway, gone down to a little brush just to add a little bit more detail, in this case in the eyes. It's a small flat brush, so I'm using it very much like a palette knife in that sense as well. You can see also at this stage and further down the line and right at the end how much of the original colour of the canvas is showing through, and how it contributes to the end result. The thing to imagine is how different this would look if it were on a white background. I very rarely paint onto a white background for that reason, because it gives you, effectively you've sort of done half the painting before you start with this sort of mid-tone background. In this case it's quite a strong colour in its own right, the red, but and therefore very expressive for this very iconic portrait of Michael Jackson. But the point is that it's a mid-tone colour, so you can go much lighter, but you can also go darker. Again, I'm smudging the paint there with my fingers just to soften it and move it around. It's a bit sort of sculptural. You sort of imagine as if you're sculpting with the paint as well as anything else, as well as painting with it, as well as printing with it. Bit more colour creeping in here and there. One of the things I love about palette knife is that sort of hit and miss effect, if you like, where you see me sort of printing, but in a very rough way, so that you're getting that imperfection of the print of the paint being printed onto the substrate, and the effect that achieves. And we're sort of down to less than 2 minutes now, and I'm still working with light colours predominantly here, just to lift the portrait off the background, off the red, the mid-tone background. So now I'm going to find some darker colours, and I've gone for some very bright sort of ultramarine blues there, which contrast strongly with the background and with the face. You can also see that I've still got some of the original colours I've been using for the face on the blade at this point, so they're sort of appearing and manifesting here and there just spontaneously, which I really like. I don't like things to be too precise. So we're down to about the last 15 seconds or so. just enough to get the rough definition of the face in. I think I do a tiny bit more on the chin just as we're closing. Last few seconds. There we go. So there we go. That's a 10-minute portrait, speed portrait of Michael Jackson. Hope you've enjoyed this short film, and do stay tuned for more. And many thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It supports the channel, helps me more than you would know. Hope to see you at the next one. Thank you. Bye.